My name is Steve Miller. I'm a professor of math stats, and what I want to talk to you today is about choosing open problems for classes. There are several different types of open problems I've used in my classes. Some of them are problems related to my research, some of them are just things I'm interested in, some of them are things I think undergraduates might be interested in. And one of the advantages I've found of these open problems is the students are really able to get interested in these problems and they run with them a lot more than with the standard problems. They like the fact that they have some control, that no one has really looked at or solved these problems before, and this gives a very different dynamic than you have with the standard problems where everyone's looked at this before, everyone's already calculated this and gotten the same answer. There are several competing things you have to look at when choosing a good open problem. One is to make sure it's still accessible to the students. And I found that at all levels of the classes I'm teaching, I can come up with open problems related to my research where some progress can be made with the techniques in that class. One of my favorite examples involves the bobblehead over here. A couple of years ago, I received an email which began, "My name is David Kelly, I'm a senior criminal investigator of the Internal Revenue Service." And at this point, I stopped reading the email, and finally I get up enough courage to read the rest, and the next line is, "I just read with interest your recent paper in Acta Arithmetica." And after overcoming the shock that someone actually read one of my papers, I started corresponding with him, and I knew at the time that some of the math I did is related to detecting tax fraud, but it was interesting to see the IRS's take on this. And so I ended up having lots of conversations with them, and eventually this led to some projects which involved just basic probability and analysis, which was very accessible to some of my students. And so whenever I was teaching classes, I would try to work the stuff in. This is a bobblehead they gave me lots of stuff which I showed to my students. And in the end, 4 undergraduates in one of my classes said, we'd like to run with this a little bit further. And so we formed an independent study group. They ended up doing a wonderful job. We presented their results at a conference. I talked about it when I gave a talk at the Boston offices of the IRS. And they did far more work for something like this because it really excited them and it showed them the possibilities of what they could do. And to me, this is one of the great things about choosing open problems like this. I recently gave a exam in my senior seminar in number theory, and several of the questions are unsolved as of now. And in fact, one of my students has recently just solved it. And so he spent a lot more time working on this because the problem was really exciting and grabbed him, and he enjoyed the challenge of looking at something no one had looked at. The other thing which I've started doing at Williams, which I haven't done before, is in my classes, students have to create their own homework problems. And I've told them they're going to just be graded on having done it, not having done it. They can choose whatever level of difficulty they want with the problem, but they're encouraged to try to come up with a good question. One of the hardest things is figuring out what's the right question to ask in the subject. And so I've told the students, I'll assemble the list of questions and I'll pass it out to the class. And so I did this in my senior class again, and one of the questions the students came up with is a variant of one of the biggest open questions in the field. And a bunch of the students in the class got excited by this, and they started working on it, and they independently constructed certain sets of special numbers which were already known in the literature and came up with basically the best known results in the field, just from a question that they chose to ask related to the work. And they weren't getting extra credit for any of this, they just were doing this because they truly enjoyed the subject. And to me, that's one of the nice things about asking open questions like this. If getting the students involved in their education, I think they will amply repay such efforts.